Hi, this is Tim Tom. I'm here with news and politics. And today we want to talk about the response to the George Floyd verdict. As you know, the whole media and everybody has shined in. They're all on this big old bandwagon saying that justice has been served. This is great. Police accountability and all this stuff. So I want to get into it. I want to talk about it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip from Vice President Kamala Harris. So let's play this clip and then we're going to kind of break it down and talk about it. Okay, let's go.
First, I want to thank the jury for their service. And I want to thank Mr. Floyd's family for your steadfastness. Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system. Last summer, together with Senator Cory Booker and Representative Karen Bass, I introduced the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This bill would hold law enforcement accountable and help build trust between law enforcement and our communities. This bill is part of George Floyd's legacy. America has a long history of systemic racism. First, I want to thank the
Okay. So there you have it. And she basically said America has a long history of synthetic racism. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. We must reform the system. So I want to break this down. I want to first say that has nothing to do with racism. Racism was never brought up in the case. He didn't put his knee on his neck or anything like that because he was black. George Floyd resisted arrest, and they have hid that from us. George Floyd has a long history of drug abuse and a long criminal history, and they did not want to tell you that, and they hide that. Between 1997 and 2005, George Floyd has been convicted of 8 crimes. He has served 4 years in prison. He accepted a plea agreement for aggravated robbery, home invasion in 2014. So they kind of hide that. George Floyd was a criminal. He wasn't a good guy. He did a lot of things. Now, I'm not saying he deserved to die, but this has nothing to do with racism. George Floyd, like I said, was a criminal. He went to jail. He have done a lot of things. And then secondly, she's talking about starting to act and policing. Listen, police are untrained. Police are sometimes incompetent and don't need to shoot people. But again, this is about a police officer that made a bad decision. I mean, it looked really bad. I really don't think he killed him. I think George Floyd was high. I think he was, under a lot of pressure with police on him and things like that. Because if you really put a lot of pressure on the neck, these pipes shows up. The brain lacks oxygen. But I don't want to get into that whole anatomy. But the bottom line is the Democrats are kind of turned this into a racist thing. History of racism in America. This is nothing about race. This was one cop that made a very bad decision, that did lack of poor judgment, and it had nothing to do with him being black or white. And they don't want to talk about George Floyd's record. I mean, a lot of these police killings and shootings, I've made this argument that these aren't black men that have degrees and going to college and working and on their way to college and work, and then a white cop just pulls them over and shoots them. A lot of times, these are people that are in trouble with the law, people that are resisting arrest, people that are not compliant with the officer. It's not about race. And I'm not saying they deserve to die. So I want to play another clip here. And this is by Nancy Pelosi. It's more of the Democratic buffoonery. Let's play this one.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice. His name synonymous with justice and dignity and grace and prayerfulness. So we thank God. We thank Jesus, because we were praying to him all along. Right, Donna? We thank God. We all saw it on TV. We saw it happen. And thank God the jury validated what we saw. What we saw. Thank you, George.
So he didn't sacrifice himself for justice. He died. He was on drugs. He was resisting arrest. And the thing about it, you see all these people here in the background. They're all out here. If they don't get the verdict they want, they're going to burn down the city. You know, they got Maxine Water out here complaining, be confrontational. You want to talk about exciting insurrection. What about Nancy Water? You know how they just ignore that? How she threatening jurors? They just ignore that. The left doesn't want to talk about that. But all these people out here worried about George Floyd, but yet, you know, every day in Chicago, every weekend in Chicago, 6 or 7 black people die. There's no protests. There's no Black Lives Matter. They don't care about that. You know, one of the is a white officer and there's racism, and they could use that narrative. They're all about that. So it's more garbage. And I think it was some other factors. The trial was going to be in Minnesota. It was impossible to get a fair trial in, Minnesota. It's impossible. If you do something in a city and then they try you in that city after, the media, and then they're threatening jurors, what do you think is going to happen? I think he should have got charged with manslaughter. I think that murder is a little bit hefty. Because when we talk about murder, that means that you intentionally tried to kill somebody. You wanted to kill somebody. I don't think he wanted to kill somebody. And these cops just have to be smarter about this. I mean, it's a different era. You cannot put your knee on somebody and leave it there, especially when people are looking at you. So I think the cop just made poor judgment, wasn't thinking, didn't care. If he would have just, even if he had his neck on him for a second and then took it off when they told him to take it off and he died, he still would have been blamed for it because he had his neck on there for 2 seconds. So it was a no-win situation. But for him to leave it there for 8 minutes, it just looks bad. And I think manslaughter is a fair charge. When you say murder, it means intent, that he intentionally, murdered someone. He got up in the morning and planned this, and I don't think that's the case. But this is the new era we live in, where social justice is becoming justice. So he's going to jail, and he's going to jail a long time, and that's just the way it is. But that's my opinion on this. But I like how the Democrats really jump on this and turn this into racism and all cops are bad. And then, when you need help, who are you going to call? The cops. When you need something, who are you going to call? The cops. But, cops are just out here killing innocent people. I do admit some of these deaths, people don't deserve to die. They shouldn't die. Cops should be better trained, better equipped. But you also have to comply, too. I mean, when you decide to run, when you decide to not comply, I mean, it's just someone has to, cops I get more blame because they need to be better trained. But again, the Democrats want to spend this for narratives, spend this for votes. This is what they do. They want to capitalize off everything. And I don't think act or any law should pass for George Floyd. It shouldn't. I mean, the guy did not live a good life. He was not a good guy. He robbed people, stole people, did time in jail. It's tragic the way he died, but he was not a good guy, and then they're just gonna ignore that. Yeah, just ignore that fact. That what his whole life. Yeah, don't bring that up. Just talk about the cops. White cops are bad. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this. I'll see you next time. Thanks.